Hi, I'm Sonia.
I'm Jonathan Ward.
And I'm Kimberly Lane, and together we're Unlocking Leadership. We're three experienced executive coaches with very different disciplines. In every episode, we take a question from a real client and provide key insights to address their challenges from our three different perspectives. It's a holistic approach to understanding challenges and opportunities. So our first question, or actually our only question for this episode, is from Kristi in Laguna Niguel, California. She asks, have you heard of the term quiet firing? A colleague shared an article that described what had been going on in her company, and she's wondering whether she should stay or go if they're treating employees this way, that is quiet firing. Jonathan, what do you think Kristi should recommend to her colleague?
Well, that's a great question, Kristi. I had not heard that term before. I'd heard of quiet quitting, but I had not heard of quiet firing. And so I looked that up, and then I realized it's a new term for something that's been going on a very, very long time in companies. And actually, I have a very emotional reaction to it when we start talking about the practice. It's one of those things that I've seen happen in a lot of organizations that I've worked for. It's a situation that comes up in companies, and from an HR standpoint, what happens is the quiet firing thing can often happen when they need that employee to leave, but they can't fire the employee because they might get the company into some sort of legal issue, some sort of legal adverse action. And so it's a passive aggressive way, shall we say, but it's also a legally protective way for organizations to give somebody the message that they really need to think about moving on. Sometimes it can happen like taking somebody out of a role and putting them on a special assignment. I worked with one company that the executives who were being quiet fired were all put into, at one time or another, if an executive was assigned to be the vice president of HR, you knew that they were on their way out the door in that organization because HR became the dumping ground for executives. It was just really crazy to see how that happens. So it's not a very pretty thing. It feels awful when you see it happen to a friend or a mentor of yours. I had a person who was my mentor and champion at one of my companies got quiet fired, and I had to be, it was one of those things where I got advice from people, be really careful, don't let yourself get tangled up with being identified with him, or you're going to be out the door as well. And I thought, boy, it's a really it's an awful feeling if you're in that kind of situation, because you start feeling like you're radioactive and people don't want to be associated with you. And I think it's one of the worst things that you can feel at work somehow like that. So it is not pretty. And unfortunately, like I said, it seems to be one of those things that happens in a lot of organizations. So if you leave because they treat people that way at your company, I think that's certainly right according to your values, but just be aware that you might go to other organizations that you'll see that kind of thing happen as well. So, if it happens to you, or if it happens to somebody who's close to you, I would advise you to think about you're probably hearing your friend's side of the argument. There are other sides of the argument too that are going on from why the company is doing that. And so be very careful not to get involved in rumors or saying things that might be taken out of context and things like that. So I hate to advise you to be super careful about things like that, but I think the best thing you can do is focus on your own performance and the way you show up at work, and with luck that kind of thing won't happen to you. How about the rest of you? What do you think about that?
Well, I agree with you, Jonathan, that it's unfortunately an approach that a lot of companies have taken, and I look at it as part of their culture not being able to be as transparent and as clear as they can be. So the area that they target is the area that people would want to be rewarded and be able to advance or move. And so by delaying or preventing promotions, or delaying or preventing any kind of raises, the message clearly is, there isn't, we don't perceive your value and we don't see you contributing to the organization. And so I guess the thing that I would encourage anybody experiencing this kind of situation is, what is it that you want to have as your legacy for your career? And if you are going to be, as a result of this, operating in a much more cautious way, in a way that maybe your true value can't come through, you may not actually get to experience, your full potential. And so one of the things to think about is, am I going to be engaging in behavior that is not bringing forth the best in me as a result of being concerned about how somebody else is not having their career progress? Now, I've seen this done many, many times. And I was coaching in a company where this was being done to somebody, and the person that I was coaching was the boss of this individual. And so he was all tied in knots as to how to deal with this. And I basically said to him, I said, if somebody isn't working out, they know that. And so if you feel comfortable enough because you feel like you have a good relationship with them, even though your management is telling you to do differently, maybe having a conversation in which you talk about what that person's potential and opportunities are and what their gifts are, so that they can actually arrive as to whether this is the best place for them to be experiencing that. What was interesting is he actually did that. And he said, we're both relieved. The person told me, I don't really want to work here. I know I'm not a right fit for this job. And if you could help recommend me to something else, so they put their heads together and thought about a better place. And I think it was a better outcome for everybody, including the rest of the team, because this person was somebody that was very well liked, and people often help that person do their job, but everybody knew the person wasn't carrying their weight. So it was a solution. It's not the solution, but it's something to think about, is if there is an opportunity, because people who are not going to progress, in a sense, are even more frustrated than they have to go home to a husband or a wife that's wondering what's going on in their career. They probably aren't sleeping well. They're probably either losing weight or gaining weight. And those are all negative things that we need to have people around us that are at least experiencing the best of themselves. So, Kimberly, what do you think?
It's a messy challenge. It's you've got two sides of the equation. It's a great question, and thank you for bringing this to attention, Kristi. So, if from your friend and what's going on in her organization, if it's not her being experienced the quiet firing, but she's perceiving it's happening in her company, my first question would be, is it a specific manager issue, or is it something that's permeating the entire organization that the whole culture has adopted, right? So is it just one manager's lack of competency and accountability and comfort level to have difficult conversations to say, what do you need? Would it help? Your performance is struggling. You're not meeting these criteria. We need to put you in training. What else can we give you of value? Some coaching, or whether it's a performance improvement plan, whatever. They're just not comfortable having those difficult conversations. So they feel if they just ignore the problem, i.e. keep that person isolated, not engaged, not involved, not promoted, not giving any kind of compensation reward, any kind of feedback, they'll just kind of go away, right? So that's an issue that she can perspective she might want to look at from the whole company perspective, or is it just a given individual? If it's just a given individual, are there other leaders who are not demonstrating that feature that she could talk to possibly and bring it to somebody's attention in HR? That would kind of be the ideal situation. If it's truly permeating the organization, my quick answer would be it's probably in her best interest to leave. Now, with that being said, there's responsibility from her part when she goes to her next organization, in addition to the leadership. So setting up expectations in that first conversation when even before you've taken this new position, about what are the expectations of the role? How do I know I'm doing a great job? How often is feedback giving? This is what I need from a feedback perspective. This is where I'd like to go. How is that laid out in your organization? How can I guarantee that sequence for the most part will get followed? How do I make sure I'm doing my best? So, I would encourage you highly to have those conversations early on and keep that cadence with your organization. And your leadership has to be accountable in giving that to you, but you also have to be accountable on the great point that Sonia brought up, that accountable if you or any individual in any organization knows they're not the right fit, knows it isn't the perfect job for them, knows they're not performing their best. you have to be accountable for your behavior, one, in taking care of yourself, and two, in honoring your commitment to coming to that organization to do your best and find an opportunity that would serve you better as far as your natural skills and skill sets, and look for other people to help you in that. I know we kind of dumped a lot on you, but it's a really great question, and it is really messy. And so it's really kind of, I think, in a nutshell, it's about setting expectations between both parties, and both parties being accountable, right? Accountable to help the employee be the best version of themselves and giving them the tools in the pathway, and the employee being accountable in the essence that if they're truly not doing a great job and quiet firing needs to occur, they have to be accountable enough to say, you know what, maybe this isn't my right fit, right? Doesn't mean I'm a bad person or a bad employee. Just this isn't the right fit for me and I'm not thriving. I need to find somewhere where I thrive. Right?
That's an absolutely great point. Yeah, I think if your company's not happy with you, chances are you're probably not feeling good about things either. And it might be the best for you to, if you can't identify specifically what's going to happen, that sometimes just getting a new start somewhere else is a really good approach.
But
go ahead.
I just say it's just about setting those expectations. Have those difficult conversations up front. This lack of communication, and both sides doesn't know what the other one's really truly thinking. They're guessing, right? They're thinking that they don't really like their job, or they're not really enthralled with their role and don't really want to be engaged, and they just want to show up and leave. So therefore they're going to quiet fire them, right? Or, vice versa, right? So it's just, I think if communication could happen, it would help ease the situation a little bit.
Yeah, there was the company where it wasn't like I could say that, like Jonathan said, they went to a particular department headed, but there was like a particular building that people went to, and I said, oh, they're going to Siberia. So it was my definition of them being put, if you will, out to park. And I guess the thing that I would point out is, sometimes that does happen to people as they get towards the end of their career. And again, who knows why that might be happening. But the thing that I'm cautioning anybody is, when you get to a place where you are no longer being seen as a person that contributes and is included in things, it affects your confidence. And it's so important for you to be confident in order for you to be able to have a healthy life and be around other people and contribute. So don't let this, if this is a situation that you face, then value yourself, look out for yourself. Put your mask on first in terms of being able to make sure that you get the right oxygen for you to have to arrive at your own confidence level. Any other thoughts on this question?
Hey, I would say get the feedback early too. If you're starting to feel like things aren't working out, or that you're not on the right path, talk to your boss about that early. Don't wait until it's too late.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Because there is a term that is used, and that is when the executive derails. And so, as Jonathan says, get it before the full derailing, because people then at that point think that they have nothing else that they can do. All right. So thank you, Kristi from Laguna Niguel, for your question today. We hope you, our viewers and listeners, have a better understanding of how old practices that affect employees no longer needed are being redefined. To our listeners, if you like the content we shared today, please like the episode and also share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Unlocking Leadership-AskTheCoaches.com. We look forward to reading your reviews. You can also find Unlocking Leadership-Ask the Coaches on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. If you have a leadership question or would like to reach out to our coaches, please email us at info@unlockingleadership-askthecoaches.com. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us today. Tune in next time to find the keys to unlocking your best leadership.